Alrighty, so this is just a video to go through how to do the connections internal if you are going with the mode of responding to connections through a question or answer system. So these are the basics for that process. They are not written out as paragraphs. You are answering the set questions that are provided. As such, you have to answer all the questions that are there in as much detail as you can. This is a slightly shorter version of the internal, but that means you can't miss any of the criteria that is there or you risk not achieving. You have the same thing as the other one. You have to have two connections, but you don't have to have those same connections across all four texts. Instead, you have one connection with two texts and the second connection with the other two texts. So, for example, experience of hardship, looking at Shawshank and Disabled, and experience of power, looking at Dulce et Decorum Est and the Green Beret. That's how you sort of do it. You base each part of the assessment on one text, and you answer the questions for that text with that one connection. So it's a little bit more straightforward. You don't have to have the same connection across all four texts like you do with the essay. However, to ensure that we've got the level of detail required, you have to have two pieces of evidence per text. So you have to have two examples of hardship from Shawshank or two examples of power from Dulce et Decorum Est. You need to have those two bits of evidence. You need to answer all the questions, which means you need to link your text together, which is one of the last sentences or one of the last questions. So you need to do everything that's there to ensure you can do the best that you can for it. It really, because of that fact that you haven't gone across all of the connections and all of the text and that level of detail, you are unlikely to be able to reach merit with this style of assessment. So it's definitely a good option if you're struggling a little bit, but just be warned that you can't do it that way. You have to do all the questions, as much detail as possible, and you can't really get to merit with it. So this is kind of what it looks like. Obviously, the version that you have in Word or in the OneNote document has all the spaces in there. I've just reduced that so it fits on a slide. So you repeat this process 4 times, once for each text that you do. So what I'm going to go through today is just how to answer the green, blue, lost what colours went, green, blue, and grey parts of the questions. So I'll just quickly talk through the pink ones now. These are where you want to connect your text together, so you want to talk about those connections, and I'll go into that a little bit later. And the other pink one is what the author or director is trying to make you think about, so that's the author or director's purpose. Okay, so that's just like a normal essay. So I'll go through the question parts now. So I'm going to do an exemplar using the connection of the experience of power, the human experience of power. My text is the poem Disabled. The thing I'm focusing on is the loss of power because of his disability, and that's the quote there that I have chosen. So this is the structure. This is just what it looks like. It'll look the same for you. Title, Disabled, text type, poem, author, Wilfred Owen. So author, if you're doing a film, you put the director in there. Then you summarise what the text's about. So a man who went to war and got severely injured, losing limbs, and now having to live in a hospital or institution. How is the connection, the human experience shown? The experience of power. If I wanted to be a little bit clearer, see on this one here, I don't know if you can see, there's my thing, that I've talked about loss of power. If I wanted to be a little bit clearer, that's where I would put that in. I probably should. That would be better. That would be best practices to put in how it's shown exactly. So it's not just experience of power, it's the loss of power and control. All right, so I've got my quote in there. How cold and late it is. Why don't they come and put him to bed? Why don't they come? So that's one of the last 2 lines of the poem. So how does this piece of evidence show your connection? So the connection is this bit here. So how does it show that? This shows the experience of power because we can see what happens to a man when he loses power himself. War had the power and it destroyed him, and now he is weak. He cannot get himself to bed anymore and has to rely on someone else. So just answering best detail that I can do. Why might this be significant? What does it teach us? What does it show? So this is trying to think about the bigger messages. Does it connect to other parts of the text? Does it connect to society at the time? Does it connect to the author or the director? If you're looking at the film, does it connect to other parts of the film? Does it connect to other characters? Does it foreshadow something? Does it change later in the text? Trying to think of those bigger messages, broadening out a little bit. So not just looking at that one line in the poem, but thinking about the whole poem, whole idea that was going on. So here I've written, it shows the power that war had over him. It makes us feel sad for him because he is just a young man and now he cannot do normal things because of the impact of the war and his injury. I might want to talk about how he was lied to. So remember with our World War I stuff, we went through all the context. People could be as young as 15, 16 in war. So when they were in the hospitals, they could be young as, your age, 17, and in hospital, losing limbs, not ever going to be able to walk again, things like that. So that would be the opportunity that you can show all that knowledge that you have, why it might be important, what else it can show, why it's significant. So this is the stuff that you want to put a little bit of detail in. If you do this stuff and you do all of your answers really well, this stuff could creep you into that merit point if it's done well. So the next steps from there are quite simple. You complete that same process using another piece of evidence from your text, so another quote. It's really important that you have specific evidence, so a quote, a scene from the text, a film technique to help you out there has to have that. It's part of the criteria. Your explanation then might show how that piece of evidence is looking at power in a similar or different way. And then you're going to talk about the writer's purpose, which is what I talked about before. And then this bit here, really important, try and connect it to another text. So it can be any of your other 3 texts that you're looking at. It can show power in a similar or different way. So you could say that the power in Disabled is similar to the power or loss of power in Shawshank, or you could talk about how it's different to the power that the Green Beret soldiers have in the poem The Green Beret, and you can talk about why. So it's really important to try and add as much detail as you can there. Once again, if that stuff's done really well, these extra connections, then sometimes we can get you into merit as well. So the connection, as I've said, can be the same text that you're using for that connection. So you saw in my earlier plan, I could do Disabled and Shawshank under one connection, and I can use my other text for the other connection. I can do that. Or you could pick any other text. So it doesn't have to be the same one that's looking at power. You could choose one of the other texts that you're looking at for a different theme or idea. Just want to try and get those connections going as much as possible. The better the work is there, the better off you're going to be. So you might think, if I have those 2 texts together that are showing the same connection and I fill out these, am I not just repeating the same information when I try and connect the text? And you might be. So that's why it's good to branch out and try and think about how it's similar to all of your text or another one of your texts. So you've got that level of detail that you can use. All right, that should be relatively straightforward. So hopefully that's helped to explain the question answering process just that little bit more, so you have a slightly clearer picture.